All right, it is September 8th. This will be the third day of DRL practicing. Got my spreadsheet here, so I was able to put in 3.4 hours yesterday, which wasn't too bad for Friday. Today I'll be able to put in quite a few more, which is good. And if we go over here, we can take a look and see. You got to see me set the new time for Boston. After that, I moved on to just doing some other maps, finishing out some of the other 2016, 2017 DRL default stuff that I already knew. All these you can see here, and repeatedly over and over through all of yesterday, I kept saying, "Oh, my alt control really needs help. My cutting the insides of turns really needs help, and my consistency really needs help." So, in kind of just messing around and continuing to just set initial times here, I noticed that the UTTs are actually really, really good for working on alt control. The first few here specifically stay very fast, very low, and have very sharp turns. So one is just like a triangle. Extremely harsh turns, crazy fast because they're straight long lines and you really need to line up for all of the gates. So I'm going to actually continue to practice in these. I got quite a bit of time in before, just like setting times and stuff, but I was noticing when I would come out of return, I would end up, lifting up. I wouldn't keep the nose down properly. I wasn't staying low. So these are going to be really good for me to focus on to try and fix that, and then I can come back through and try and set some new times. All right, so we're going to jump into multi-GP, and we will just go into UTT1. Yeah, so see how much higher I was there already and way overshooting the turns? So that's specifically what I'm trying to focus on right now. All right, I'll exaggerate my point here. If we come in, and then I usually will come like this, and now I'm way up here, and now I got to come down, and the turnaround I end up way above, right? So instead what I want is in the turnaround to stay low, so that now I'm not having to fix anything at all. Okay, the other thing is, for those of you new to flying, or new to racing, I guess specifically, you can adjust your altitude with either like flattening out a little bit. So here, let's watch the sticks at the bottom. If I leave my throttle alone, right, so not using this hand, I can increase or decrease my altitude just based on this other stick here. If I want to get lower, if I want to get higher, right? And that makes sense. If you think about how a quad works, is you've got thrust coming straight down out of all of these propellers. The more you tilt forward, the more of that thrust is going out and back, pushing you forward, and less of it is going straight down to fight gravity. And the reason that's important is because for a lot of this, you're going to want to be full pegged, right? Like as fast as you possibly can be going, throttle all the way to the moon. And as a result of that, if you're going to go and try and come into a turn, you need to throw a bunch of yaw and a bunch of roll at it and try to keep your altitude exactly the same, because if instead you come at the thing and you just come like this and flatten back out, boom, now you're already, this course in particular, everything is nice and low and flat. And so we want to be staying below there, because anytime, so in a race course generally, your point A to point B, the absolute fastest path you can do is a straight line. If you're making all sorts of moves and going all over the place in between there, you're just adding distance to get from your point A to your point B. And quads is no different. The only difference is you get a third axis here, right? So it's not just a race car where we're going immediately straight line from A to B, right? So that would be our fastest path, is straight. If we were to do our shortest path, if we were to go back and forth like this over and over, that's a much longer distance. The other thing to keep in mind that's very important is it's also a longer distance if we do something like this, where we go up and down, or even just up and down once and then having to come in there. The other thing is just from a consistency standpoint. If I'm coming up and then having to now hit this gate from the top like that, that's very, very difficult. It's almost like trying to hit the gate. If I go straight at it like this, I get a nice big open plane. If I'm totally perpendicular to the gate, that's easy. I can fit that or hit that at Mach Looney. It doesn't matter, right? But if I'm coming at the thing at an angle like this, Now all of a sudden my gap is a rectangle. It's small. Trying to hit it at this angle may actually end up being faster for us, but it's more difficult. So the whole thing with racing is finding that gentle balance between I'm going to hit the gate every time, I'm definitely going to make that gap, and finding the absolute peak optimal line. So I've noticed specifically with this one that I struggle at the end of some of these really fast turns. I can't keep the nose down, right? Already there, I'm above this gate. That's unacceptable. I need to stay low, almost touching the grass the whole time, right? That was good. But not too low, obviously, otherwise I hit the ground. So the next variable in this whole equation is in how cars and drones are different is not only do we get a third axis, but our brakes and our throttle are the same thing. In a car, you would have to go jam on the brakes as hard as you can and then turn around and jam on the gas as hard as you can. With us, you just get a gas pedal. That's interesting because it usually means that for the majority of the courses, unless you're doing some sort of crazy split S or having to change position in a very accurate way such that you can't also sway in one way or the other, that means that you can kind of just leave your throttle all the way open, and usually that is your actual fastest path. You're always thinking a gate or two in advance. So when we're coming into this one, we actually want to be prepared to go through this one. So I will actually turn beforehand, and now my overshoot was more like here-ish instead of here-ish. If I have the skill to do it, I want my overshoot to be here, right? Like almost nothing. So I want to be absolutely as close as I can to the inside leg of this turn. I want to be absolutely as close as I can to the inside leg of this turn. Again, on the inside leg of this turn. And then this one gets tricky, right? So now we can either, we've got two options. Either I take this wide on purpose for some safety, and I hug the inside leg there, and I try and hug the inside leg here. But you also got to remember that with this gate, we want to be straight as we possibly can to get to this next one. We want to be able to just book it. It's a nice wide open turn. We want to be able to really scream through this one. So you may end up taking this a bit wider on purpose to be able to hook yourself up for that nice sweeping turn for this one, so that it's nice and easy to get to this next gate. As opposed to, one might think that actually the fastest possible line, if we're only thinking one gate in advance, would be from this one. We're actually going to cut, instead of following these cones and coming all the way out here, we would just, come from here and go straight to this guy and overshoot that direction and come back through. That's not a bad option either, right? But again, we got to come realize that now we're not hitting this gate straight. Instead, we're hitting a smaller opening. So a lot of this is all, I'm going to have to play with it and see what the actual fastest line for me is and what line I can get consistent. All of this is going to be a gentle balance of figuring all of that out. I'm going to keep grinding on this for a little while. If I start making some progress, I will show you the footage.
What do we have here? Oh, it's yesterday's video. Yeah. Oh, it's tomorrow's video. How convenient. It's only going to show up if you're not watching this live, so keep that in mind.